Good morning, everybody. I'm Pastor Jeff. Sorry you got the B team today. Gave Nathan a Sunday off of preaching, but I'm glad to be with you today. It was kind of a weird morning. Anybody wake up at 4 a.m. to thunder and rain? Okay, just weird, and I just sense a weird vibe in the room. It's one of those Sunday mornings where it's rainy and kind of dark. So just stand up for a second. Just kind of take a deep breath. We all need to just sort of reset, recalibrate. Kids, shake the sillies out. Just take a deep breath, stretch. Make sure your phone is off. You can use it if you want to refer to it for scripture, but put it on Do Not Disturb so that you're fully present in this moment. Okay, I'm going to make awkward eye contact with most people here, just making sure everybody okay. All right, you may be seated. Good. As Pastor Nathan mentioned, we're in a series called God's Story, Your Story, where I just want you to know one of our hopes as pastors is that at the end, you would be able to share your story in a clear, concise, compelling way. You might have something to say if somebody says, hey, you go to church, what's up with you? Or you're a person of faith. Tell me about that. What's your story? We want you, as your pastors, to have something to say that's true, that's accurate, but that's also personal, compelling, because we believe God has done something in your life, your story, that you have something to share and something to say. I just had a wedding last night in Herman, Missouri, and it's always funny. Obviously, people know you're a pastor, so they kind of treat you a little bit different, but people ask, like, why are you a pastor? I grew up Catholic, and you seem a little bit different. Tell me about that. And so even in the course of my average daily life, I get people that say, what's up with you? Why would you do that? I had a guy who said, I've given up on Catholicism. I'm like, oh, that's fine. Have you given up on God? And it's like a little in. And then you get to kind of share, what's important to you. So again, at the end of this, we want you to have thought about your story, what God has done in your life, and to have a story to share if somebody asks you what's up with you. You all know the Nike swoosh, right? You know the swoosh, the logo. What's the slogan that's been Nike's slogan for decades? Just do it, okay? Dex, I think we have that, so just in case you didn't know, this is Nike. This logo, not just logo, but the slogan has been used since the late 1980s, and Nike still uses it today. And it's really genius. If you study marketing or PR, it's become just catchy in 3 words. It's made billions of dollars. And it's just Nike. Everybody knows it. There was an article in a website called Brandvertising that talked about how Nike tapped into something, an impulse in every human being that tapped into this in 3 words. The article says, one of the reasons Nike's Just Do It campaign has been so successful is that it speaks to something deep within us. The campaign taps into our inherent desire to be successful, to push ourselves to our limits. In many ways, what this is tapping into is something deep in our culture. Just do it. We live in a culture of do. Do more, be more, have more, achieve more. Move up the ladder, get more status, be more successful. That's American culture, right? We're all just in it. We're swimming in that culture of just do it. Do more, have more, be more. And in that culture, everybody kind of, even if you don't think about it, you're operating in that world of do. And there's a sense in which that's just fine. So I'm going to say some things today, and I don't want you to mishear me and think that Pastor Jeff is telling you not to work hard or to be lazy. Okay, that's not what I'm saying. Do is fine, or just do it is okay in its right place. But there's also a flip side to it. There's a darker side to a culture of do more, be more, have more. And here's the darker side. What happens when I can't do anymore? Or what happens when I do everything I can and I fail? Or what happens when I do my best but somebody does better and they're the winner and I'm the loser? Or what happens when I do but I can't quite do enough? So there's a dark side to a culture of do or just do it. And it kind of haunts us, that we're always kind of comparing and competing and then wondering, have I done enough? So do more is sort of our societal religion a little bit in America. And so we're kind of told you have to be pretty, be popular, be productive so that you can do more and be more and have more. And the result is exhausted people. The culture of do more has accelerated so much that it leaves exhausted people. And on a Sunday morning, just before 11 o'clock, I look out at you and I see people that are on the treadmill trying to keep up with do more, and you're tired, and you're weary. You do more, you try harder, you wake up, you pound some caffeine, you get through the day, you get home, you crash, you go to bed, and you do it all over again. And that's sort of the cycle of American culture, and a culture of do more. And then in the end, you wonder, have I done enough? Have I worked hard enough? Has any of my work made any difference? Has anything I've done, does it really matter? Those are all questions in a culture of do more. I'm going to say it again. A culture of do is okay if you're getting a degree or working toward a promotion. Like, it's okay to work hard. But in the realm of relationship with God, culture of do more is actually dangerous. It can be fatal. Every religion in the world is really a system of do. Dex, you want to go to the next slide? It's like a ladder. So every religion in the world is like a ladder that has a system to reach God or reach the divine or reach an afterlife. Every religion in the world. So in Hinduism, there's karma. And if you do good, then good will come back to you, and you'll sort of, through a process of reincarnation, work your way up the ladder into a greater and greater existence. In Islam, for a Muslim, it's a system of do. You follow the 5 pillars. You pray 5 times a day, you give alms to the poor, you do your pilgrimage to Mecca, and in that way, you do and you move up the ladder. In Judaism, you follow the Torah, God's law, and you do that perfectly so that you can be one of God's people, and you climb up the ladder. Every religion in the world is a system of do, except for one. The Christian story is distinct, that while it has law and things to do, fundamentally, relationship with God is not based on do more, be more, have more. Christianity is distinct among the world's religions for this reason. It's more about what God does than about what we do. So each week, we've been unpacking God's story, and we've been pointing to what we call watchwords. And a watchword is a term that describes part of God's story and how it relates to ours. So today I have 2 watchwords for you. And these are terms that I want you to look through the lens of these terms at God's story and reflect on your story. So 2 watchwords. The first one is this. Dex, if you go to the next one. First one is grace. That's the first watchword today. And for some of you who've grown up in the church, you're like, oh, I got this. I know about grace. Before you have that reaction, just let me remind you that grace is not like the 101 class that you pass, and then you move on to the 201 and the 301. Grace is an aspect to the Christian story that you are just bathing in at all times. And you never, ever get over it. So just to reset yourself, if you think you know what grace is, just to reset. Grace means unmerited favor. It means that someone has a disposition toward you that you do not earn or deserve. In fact, grace is clearest when you've done something that deserves a consequence. And the person from which you deserve the consequence chooses to forgive you or to show you favor even when you don't deserve it. That's grace. The world says do. We live in a culture of do. Grace says done. The world says do more, be more, have more. Jesus says it is finished. The world says you have to earn it. Jesus says, I've already earned it for you. I've done it already at the cross. The world says you have to impress. And so you have to impress God to do something to get him to like you or to show you favor. Jesus says, no, it's not about your resume, it's about my resume and what I've done at the cross for you in your place. It's done already. You're already chosen. You're already the beloved of God because of what I have done in blood. That's grace. And it's distinct among the world's religions that there would be in Christianity this thing called grace. That's the first watchword, grace. Second watchword, Dex, if we go to the next one. It's a Latin term, extra nos. It's really fun to say, so if you would say it with me, extra nos. Okay, you just spoke some Latin. It's not even pig Latin. You spoke like real Latin just now. So tell all your friends. Extra nos means outside of ourselves, outside of oneself, or from the outside. So to go back to the culture of do, the religion of do, in our world today, it's do more, have more, be more. And under that is a fundamental belief that there is a power in your own will that can do it on your own. And so you hear it in things like believe in yourself or just pick yourself up and just do it. That works, to a degree, but I'm going to tell you, you're not that good. And I'm not that good. So again, in our culture, there's sort of do it yourself. There's a power within you. There's a divine spark. And if you just kind of muster up the strength or the energy, you can do anything. That's a pervasive kind of message in our society. Christians, just so you know, we have a low view of humanity. Okay? Again, we realize we're not as good as we thought we were. And so read the Bible, and there's sort of this pattern of human beings being very limited and continuing to mess up. So we have a very kind of low view of our inner will to do stuff on our own. This is why extra nos from the outside is so important. Extra nos means you can't, from the inside, make yourself right with God. You can't impress him on your own. You need help. You need a rescuer, and you need help from the outside. Someone that will invade. Sometimes the term alien is used. Alien from the outside to invade and do something in your heart that you are incapable of doing on your own. Again, this is one of the things that makes Christianity unique. Dex, if we could go back to the ladder, the next slide. So again, every religion in the world is about you doing something. It's a system of do, climbing the ladder. Christianity is the only religion where the divine comes down to you because you couldn't even get to the first rung. You need help from the outside. It's related to grace again. These are distinctive parts of God's story, that he comes from the outside. Paul says, while we were sinners, Christ died for us. When we were at our worst, when there was nothing good in us, when our resume was only, all we could show was only sin and failure, when that was the reality, that's when Christ died for us. Not when you were good, not when you had it all together, not when you just did it and you did it really well. On your worst day, with your biggest secrets, that's when Christ died for you. That's extra nos. That's from the outside, God for you from the outside. 2 watchwords today: grace and extranos. So what does this have to do with you and your story? So we believe that God deals with us graciously. We believe he comes to us from the outside of ourselves. If that's true of God, then I'm convinced that everyone here has experienced God in this way, somehow. That you can look at your own story and you can point to a time when God was gracious. Or you can point to a time when God worked from the outside and pulled you out when you couldn't do it yourself. So I want you to use these watchwords, and I'm going to give a moment for you to reflect on your own story. Again, an outcome. I want you to be able to tell somebody your story of God's grace in your life. So I have 2 prompts to help you reflect on your story. The first one is, how have you experienced God's grace in your life? Or how have you experienced God work from outside of yourself? As you think about these 2 questions, you might think about a time when you were overwhelmed with guilt about something and you heard a word of forgiveness. Or maybe a time when you deserved a consequence, you hurt somebody and you deserved their wrath, and instead they forgave you and you experienced God's forgiveness through them. Or maybe it was a time in your life when you were at a complete low in a valley and you couldn't climb out on your own, and God reached in from the outside and brought you out. But I want you to think about, in your own story, how have you experienced God's grace or his work from the outside? And I'm so serious about this, I'm going to give like 30 seconds of super awkward silence for you just to think. I don't want you to just gloss over this. I think you need a moment to think about a time in your life or a moment of experience when you've experienced this. So I'm going to give when it gets really awkward, I'll break the silence, okay? Just take a moment. Good job. Thank you for humoring me as you reflect on your story. Ruben and Noel started visiting our church last summer of 2023. And they came from a Christian tradition where they started to feel like a burden, a weight, that they had to do something. Cortez and Tarcia, I think you probably started coming to our church around the same time. And your story maybe is similar as you're kind of wrestling with what is this. And Ruben and Noel gave me permission to share with you that they had a moment where they heard the gospel, they heard of grace from a Lutheran perspective, and it just sort of opened their world. It was a freedom for them. In a culture of do, they were sort of freed by this word of grace. And so they Googled Lutheran churches, and somehow they found our church, particularly our South Lindbergh campus, and they've been there ever since, just every week. They're just eating it up. When we talked about communion, they wanted to take communion. We did instruction, and when they came to communion for the first time, they came up, and as I handed them the bread and the wine, they started to weep because they were experiencing grace in a really tangible way. I have to admit, as a pastor, sometimes I just sort of walk through the motions of our sacraments, and it was helpful to me to say, oh, no, this really matters. This grace is real, and it's coming from the outside, and God is doing something to me. They have a little girl, and they asked, Pastor Jeff, could we have her baptized? And I said, sure. And as soon as I said that, they started to weep because they came from a place where they thought you had to do something to get God's grace and to be baptized. And at her baptism, they wept. And it was a reminder to me that God's story is so profound and that He invites us into it apart from anything that we can do, earn, or deserve. Reuben and Noel's story is one of experiencing grace. And so I'm going to share with you Reuben's story, or he's going to share with you his story. And as you hear his story, I want you to reflect on your own. We hear Reuben's story.
So my brother was murdered in 2005, and I was 11 years old. So at that point in time, it's kind of hard to grasp, like how to feel, where to go from here and everything else. So what ended up happening was, as years go by, and I took it in and I didn't expose it and didn't deal with it. I ended up rebelling, and all of everything that I felt came out in one summer where I just couldn't take it anymore. I was angry with God specifically, and I just wanted to just lash out. So I was drinking a lot. I was hanging with the wrong crowd, around all these guns and money and drugs and everything else. And that same summer when I started downward spiraling, my ex-girlfriend at the time, which is now my wife of 9 years, came by with a Bible. And when she came by, it was almost as if God was just trying to reach out to me. And what I learned through that was that not only that He still loved me, but He cared, and that not only that He loved my brother more than I could imagine. And because of that, I saw Him in a different light. It was like I had an opportunity to know Him for myself for who He was. And He welcomed me back with open arms, without resistance. He showed me grace, gave me forgiveness, even in my anger towards Him and me not wanting anything to do with Him. He still welcomed me back with open arms, just like the prodigal son. And I had to be grateful and thankful for that. And even now, as I live out my life, I'm not perfect, so I may fall short, but grace is still there. His grace is sufficient, and He's consistent. That's my story.